Welcome to the latest episode of FoodTech Stories. I'm your host, FoodTech marketing expert Megan Thomas. FoodTech Stories features the leaders pioneering new approaches to technology, collaboration, and storytelling in the food tech and ag tech space. Food and agricultural changing, and fresh ideas and leadership are needed to sustainably feed the growing global population. Join us every other week as we talk to a founder, operator, or visionary in food and agriculture. My guest today is Noga Golan, founder and CEO of Food Impact Partners, an executive search and recruiting firm focused on serving food systems innovators. Welcome to the podcast, Noga.
Thank you, Megan. It's great to be here.
How did you get your start in food and food systems?
My career background is actually in investing and in finance. It was important to me to do something that makes the world a better place and use my skills and my career to do that. I learned about factory farming and just what the food system is today. It became an issue that I cared a lot about and something that I wanted to support and change.
So you work in the executive search and recruiting field. What brought you to that field?
I wanted to improve the food system and make it better for the planet, for people, for animals. I thought about what that meant and what I could do in that space. I didn't want to start another food tech company. The obvious one for me was actually an investment company, and I thought about that a lot. That was what a lot of my close friends and professional advisors advised me to do. But at the time, it just didn't seem that there was a need for one more investment company. It felt that there was a need for support for the industry. There were a lot of innovating companies in the food and ag space that already existed. There are a lot of funders. What was needed was support for these companies to make them better and set them up for success. In looking into that and talking to dozens of startup founders, executives in food innovation, one of the things I identified that was needed was the need for better recruiting support, better leadership, more diverse leadership from different areas, more awareness of the food innovation space and the connection to how it makes the world a better place.
Definitely, and I can see where there is that niche. It's been really interesting to see how you're approaching it. When I get the chance to meet listeners of the podcast, they often mention the quality of the production as one of their favorite parts of the show. That praise is due to the team that edits the show, TJG Media. Their team works with the raw audio files of each interview to enhance the quality of the sound, minimize external noise, and cut out the natural pauses that occur in conversation to create each fast-paced episode. Plus, they create engaging short-form videos to promote each episode on social media. Visit tjgmediallc.com to find out more. Do you believe that your background in finance and investing has a bearing on how you run the company? How is it relevant?
I'm told often by our clients that one thing that makes us different is we come at our recruiting, executive search, leadership search more from an investor's perspective. And that definitely comes from my background and the lens that I look at it, adding long-term value, compiling a team that will add to the success of the company as a whole, and not just looking to check off the box of we hired this person, we had a role that we needed to fill, we get a fee for it, but looking through it with a more long-term partnership lens. Another area is growing up in my career in finance and investing. I've met a variety of very different types of people that are very different from the people that work in food. One thing that I've learned is the skills, the insights, the perspectives that they can bring to this industry that are lacking. There are a lot of them, including how to monetize it, how to fundraise better, and how to bring our industry to more success.
Do you have an example of a specific situation where you've brought that unique perspective and had a really interesting outcome?
We hear a lot about hiring for culture fit. When we're working with a company, we always want to understand their culture because we don't want someone that's going to clash or make their life harder. Something that we often push back on, and I think this comes from my background, is why is culture fit important and what does that mean? There are certain elements that are important, but then there's also elements that we don't want to overlook. We don't want to hire people that are exactly like us because it feels better. We actually want to hire people that can challenge our perspectives and the company's perspectives that may not feel comfortable in the moment, but in the long run are building a better company, a more solid company, and setting up the company for success. hiring diverse perspectives can kind of help just take off the blinders. For example, we worked with a vegan brand that was creating alternative meat products. Their target audience was not vegans. Their target audience was the general population. Almost everyone at that company was quite like-minded, loves animals, cares about the planet, very similar type of personality, and almost all of them were vegan or vegetarian. They sought someone they wanted to hire that we were working on was actually a commercialization sales role, a fairly senior one. They wanted someone that was vegan or vegetarian or very similar to that vibe that would fit into that culture. That's something that we pushed back on. We talked to them a lot, tried to understand what is the need, and what we concluded was mission alignment is important. We want the person in this role, this commercialization role, to genuinely want the company to succeed, to care about the product, to be passionate about the product, and to be able to sell it. But actually, there's a lot of value in having someone that has eaten meat their whole life, goes to barbecues, shopping in the meat aisle, and considering having some plant-based options or some alternatives. That adds a lot of value, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable in the culture because there's a little bit of difference of perspectives. That company ultimately ended up hiring someone that actually loves meat. This person wanted to join this company because they believe that this is better for the planet, but they still eat meat and they just reduce their intake a little bit. That I think is crucial. The company ended up hiring that person, and it's been a very successful hire for them and has gotten them into places that they probably wouldn't have otherwise gotten into.
The idea of going for mission fit, that having that diversity of opinion and perspective can be so important. I know research has shown teams with diverse perspectives yield better outcomes at the end of the day. I think that's a great example. Before we dig into some of the nuances of the work that you're doing, tell us a little bit about who you serve in your business. What types of clients and sectors do you work with?
Any company or organization that is doing something positive for the food system is a company or organization that is on our radar. We tend to work with a lot of startups and earlier stage companies because we get them very well and we understand the type of personality that they're looking for. But we've also worked with later stage, even public companies and large PE-backed companies. We do mostly leadership recruiting, executives, board members. We've done a few CEO searches, VP level, but we'll also do more of the technical R&D manager, fermentation manager, and roles like that.
From your perspective, what makes recruiting in food and ag innovation different from recruiting in other industries?
It really depends on the role. Obviously, the skills and the specific expertise and the experience within the industry is usually really important, but not always. It depends on the role. It depends on the company. Having a passion for this space doesn't matter necessarily what the cause is or what the reason is for the passion, but having a passion for the space, a genuine passion, is really important because this is a difficult space to be in. There's a lot of ups and downs, and sometimes those ups and downs can go for months or years because of the political environment. Having that passion can carry someone and have them be resilient for the long run, and it's different from a lot of other industries.
I find that is often challenging for people because ag in particular has very long lead times and it is so susceptible to fluctuations in weather and pest pressures and other inputs and such. I've often found those to be in opposition. So, how do you see the senior leaders that you work with really connecting that together? Are there any common patterns that you see?
The really successful leaders, something that I've seen across the board, both in food tech and in ag tech, is this open-mindedness and self-awareness. Because there are so many things you need to be good at and things you need to be an expert on, the people that succeed or the companies that succeed have leaders that know what they know and know what they don't know and know how to compensate for what they don't know or aren't strong at. That is key. It's not about weaknesses. It's about what are they really strong at so they do themselves. And then what are the components of their job or of their leadership they outsource, and how do they manage that outsourcing so that they're optimizing and bringing in the best skills, perspectives, experiences, and expertise to the company.
When a startup in particular is looking to bring in an early executive level leader, what things do you think they should be looking for and what should they be looking out for, watching out for?
Yeah, well, it depends on the stage of the startup, but if it's a fairly early stage, the go-getter mentality, the flexibility, and the demonstrated examples of resilience are going to be really important. If you're hiring right now, things are probably going well enough, and you probably have a positive outlook, and you are selling the role in the company, and you genuinely mean everything that you say. But if you're a startup, very likely you're going to run into hurdles and challenges, and you don't know what they are. Some of them you might be able to foresee, but some of them you're just not going to be able to foresee. A general personality trait I would look for is someone that has what it takes to be resilient, flexible, and adjust to the new situation in a leadership role at a small startup company. The way to look at that is just, have they done that in the past, and how have they handled challenges that weren't foreseen? Another thing that we look for in hiring leadership for startups, we always ask the question, what are the challenges going to be for this person in the first 90 days? And what are the challenges going to be in the first 6 months? And what are the challenges in the first 12 months? Don't tell us the same. There's obviously challenges for everyone, different culture, new company. We don't want to hear the things that every person will have a challenge with. We want to hear about the challenges that are unique to your company that only you know. Answering that question honestly, if you can be very honest with yourself about what that is, you are much more set up for success in terms of hiring the right person, because you are thinking about that challenge when you're hiring this person. We don't want to hire someone in a leadership role that in 6 months is going to be really frustrated that plant-based is a difficult category more than they expected, or that a news press release came out from some organization talking about processed foods and weren't prepared for that, or unhappy with that, or frustrated by that. We want to make sure that we feel confident that this person can overcome the challenges that they are likely to face in the role.
Another thing, having been on a leadership team of a scaling ag tech startup, is sometimes there can be an expectation of immediate impact that may be based on faulty assumptions. Sometimes in a startup environment, especially when you're transforming a category or creating a new category, it's a different playbook.
Yeah, and sometimes you need to take a few steps back in order to take steps forward.
Yeah, exactly. So true. So true. What's the biggest mistake that you see companies making when making those senior hires?
The first mistake that I see commonly made is hiring someone that you just really like. Like, you get along in the interview, you click, and they really get you and you really get them. That's obviously a huge bonus. It should also be taken with a grain of salt. A big mistake that I've seen is hiring someone too fast because there's time pressure. And this is where we can kind of come in and be a little bit more intentional with the process. And I'm a big believer in not wasting time and not dragging things out and inundating things with bureaucracy. Even a few more days and a little bit more thought and a little bit more strategy and planning around who you're hiring, why, what this person is going to do, what traits they need, can save a lot of time and money afterwards. Spending that time in advance to think through, what does this person achieve? What are the challenges that they're going to be facing? What are the KPIs? What does this person need to care about? Is really helpful in avoiding hiring the wrong person, or just someone that can do the role but isn't necessarily going to be great. The difference between a good candidate and a great candidate can be huge, especially at the leadership level for a company. For example, we hired a salesperson that within 6 months, they brought in $6 million of business to this company that wasn't part of their KPI. Had they hired a little bit quicker without looking at a few more candidates or without working with us, they could have lost out on that. The cost of working with a recruiter, the cost of being a little bit more strategic, putting the thought up front, can really pay off. It is hiring someone because you like them a lot and you feel the vibe is great, but they don't necessarily bring something new to the table. They give you energy and they make you feel good, and that there's value in that too, but they don't necessarily bring something new to the table. So ideally, every new leadership hire you bring on is bringing something that you wouldn't have seen, reached, done, had exposure to, thought of without that person. That can be, a relationship with a retailer, or an approach to how to do a certain thing, an approach to fundraising that might be very different from what you've thought of, an approach to how to talk about a certain product to your customers, or it can even be a different technical approach that you just would not have thought of because you did not have that background. It's not as fun necessarily to hire those people, and it's harder to evaluate what we're used to as humans. Our instinct is to hire someone that you end the interview and you feel good. You just have a good feeling. It's not about going against that, but it's just about being very self-aware and questioning what made me feel good and how much is that worth? What actual skills and expertises will this person bring that don't exist? And really being able to reflect on that and be aware.
So it's almost not a mistake per se, but having an incomplete list or rubric for what they're evaluating. They're missing key aspects of the hire.
And we always encourage our clients to have a scorecard where we're defining in advance the different aspects of what we're looking at. And that helps a lot. There's often that lasting feeling where you just feel good about someone. A first executive hire, it often tends to be someone from your network or someone that you know, and it's not necessarily a formal process. It's just being aware of what that person brings to the table that you don't have.
So, for an early stage startup who maybe has very little awareness in the marketplace or it's early days for them, how can they attract top talent?
I think the biggest thing is just awareness and people having heard of you. This is what we hear a lot from startups is we know we're great, we have a great culture, we have a great product, but nobody has heard about us. So how do we get exposure to those people? How do we not get a million resumes from LinkedIn that are just completely irrelevant? But how do we find those few people that are really relevant and aligned with our mission and would be a great fit? I think working with a recruiter can help. We will integrate ourselves with the company, understand the culture, get a really good picture of what it's like to work there. We'll create a brochure. And when we go out to candidates, it gives this perception of this is a serious company. This is a serious search. Maybe they're an emerging company, maybe they're a startup, but this isn't just one more company out of someone's garage, but here's a polished deck that talks about the company, the value proposition that actually sells the company, the role. We dig into the leader's experience. These hires need to buy into the company because in a way, they're investing in this company with their careers. So how do you sell that story to them is very important. And then there's a certain type of personality that gets really excited about that. And an early stage company where you're building something new and it could succeed and it could fail. You want that personality too. So you want to be reaching those people. It's not going to be a huge sell to them because they're already excited about it. But you just need to be able to come and show up and tell the story in a persuasive but transparent way.
I do want to talk a bit about skill sets. The market is changing in very dynamic ways right now. Are there certain skill sets, technical skill sets, obviously AI as part of the conversation, that you're seeing emerge right now or that you anticipate seeing more of in the future?
Candidates that have had experience working at startups or small companies and have also had experience working at big food companies bring something completely different to the table than candidates that have only worked at one or the other. The startup doesn't even have to be in food or ag, but just having that mindset brings something different, especially when you're at a company that is trying to do something new, disrupt, innovate in food. What these candidates bring from the startups is just the ability to question the status quo, a creativity to think outside the box, knowing how to roll up their sleeves, wear many hats, and be really creative in problem solving. And that trait is crucial in successful innovation. That is almost the definition of innovation. On the flip side, if you've only worked at startups or only worked in nonprofits and haven't worked at a big food company, what you're building is you might be missing out on some very important things in terms of what you're building because you need to understand how the broader industry works. You might not love how big and slow and bureaucratic it is and how the processes are, but having a genuine understanding of how it works behind the scenes will help you be a better innovator because you will know what these companies are looking for. If it's an ingredient, what do they care about? What do the sales cycles look like? What are the non-starters and the deal breakers and how do they think? Having both of those experiences is rare and extremely valuable.
Why should a startup or innovative food company hire a specialized executive search firm versus a generalist?
Generalist recruiting firms just don't really get it. They don't really understand the industry, and the candidates that they bring are just not really relevant. They're like close on paper, the titles sound the same, but they're not actually a fit. We understand the industry first. We are industry first. Everyone on the team is extremely passionate about the industry, has worked in the industry. I think we have a combined of 40 years of experience in the industry. We're at industry events. Our entire network is the industry. When I'm on a call with someone that says, I'm looking for someone that has experience with cultivated commercialization and understands the value proposition, there's 5 names that are popping into my head during the conversation. Maybe that person isn't the fit, but I know who to talk to and call. They're going to answer the phone. I don't need to have a cold outreach, and I can talk to them. You don't need to explain to me what cultivated meat is or the hurdles of plant-based meat, what regenerative agriculture is, because that's what we live and breathe. This is all that we do.
You can skip right up to that next level discussion and conversation.
In addition to that, it's not just that it's easier to talk to us, but when we're talking to candidates, candidates are impressed. We're explaining to candidates we have more knowledge. The candidates are excited about talking to us. Candidates know us, and we're able to reach candidates and executives that I think most generalist firms just won't get a response from. We know people will almost always have a warm introduction to the person that we're trying to reach.
I've noted that Food Impact Partners, you have a very fresh approach to how you talk about the work of the company, and you rely on social media and video and other content to tell the story of the work. I don't think I've ever seen another executive search firm do that. So I'm really intrigued as a marketer by that. What was behind your decision to do that, and what dividends has it paid?
We are at a lot of conferences. We are talking to people. We're already there. We're already doing this. The marginal effort to take a video of us being there is not that big, and it helps showcase what we're doing, but it also helps showcase the industry. Not all of the videos that we're highlighting in the companies are clients of ours or companies that we're working with or even trying to work with, but it's just about creating a community around this industry, elevating certain brands, celebrating certain news, and demonstrating to people that this is what we do and this is what we live and breathe.
If you could just give one piece of advice to a potential client with a senior leadership hiring need, what would that piece of advice be?
Don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Don't just write off working with a recruiter or paying that executive a little bit more because you're trying to demonstrate to yourself or to your investors or to your board that you're scrappy. I have seen clients lose out on the best candidate over $20K a year or something like that. That would have been a slightly higher compensation to those executives that in the grand scheme of things are 5%, 10% of what they were already going to pay, but would have achieved a much higher impact in the long run for that company. And sometimes these are make or break roles. It's also in hiring a recruiter, if that means that you're going to be a little bit more effective in finding the right person, or there's a small probability that you'll find someone that is exceptional or marginally better than the person that you would have found without them. The price is in many cases peanuts compared to the outcome.
Very interesting. I'm reminded of the example you gave earlier about the sales leader who brought in $6 million, I believe, in their first 6 months. That's extremely sound advice. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation. Noga, thank you.
I have as well. Thank you so much, Megan.
Thanks for joining us today on the latest episode of FoodTech Stories. Be sure and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform and keep an eye out for our bi-weekly episodes. I'm your host, Megan Thomas, founder of Ladris 17. FoodTech Stories is edited by TJG Media.